Just for my
Good afternoon, everybody. We're just waiting for another colleague, I think Ivo from Avon, comes to join us. So give us 1 minute and then we'll get underway the final session. We've had a busy couple of days, so just a moment to get your breath. We'll get underway with the last session.
Civil Society
So good afternoon again. My name is Seamus Jefferson. You may have seen me yesterday, didn't hear me, luckily for you. I am the director of CONCORD, and it's my great pleasure to facilitate this last session, where I think we'll try to take stock and round up this 2 days of discussion. So I'm delighted to welcome Commissioner Mimica to this forum. As you will know, Commissioner Mimica is quite new in his role. I think has been shown himself very, very open and interested in dialogue with civil societies. I think it's really appropriate and very welcome that he joins us here this afternoon. Laura Sullivan, you know, the Vice President of CONCORD and Head of Action Aid in Europe and the Americas. And Ivo, I don't know you very well, but very nice to have you from Avon, the Brazilian NGO platform. So what I propose to do is to ask Laura to give us her reflections and summing up over the last 2 days, then to ask the Commissioner for some words, and then Ivo, the last words to you. If we have time, and what I'd really welcome is a little bit of interaction at the end. If you still have the energy to do so, it would be very nice to get some feedback and thoughts from you on the floor as well. So without any more ado, Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Seamus, and thank you very much, Commissioner Mimica, for being with us here today. In this room, I was just doing some quick mathematical exercises before I stepped up here, that there is about 100 representatives of civil society from Latin America, the Caribbean, and from Europe. That's not the mathematical bit yet, but there is anywhere between 500 and 1,000 years of experience in this room in terms of civil society, working with communities at the local level, at the national level, and at the international level towards progressive change. So I think it's very important, and it's really useful for us to get this exchange with you, and I hope you see it the same way in terms of having started in your new role in November, and now really starting to get going with the new agenda for the European Commission and the European Union on development. So I really don't want to try to summarize a document that we've been working on as an input for the official forum in June, because there's so much detail in there that it wouldn't do it justice. It's still a draft document which we're finalizing. But what I would like to do is set a little bit the context of what we've been discussing about and talk about what I think, what we think you can do. So first of all, I think in terms of the forum in June, it's going to be really important to remind the participants there of the importance of civil society and the role that it plays and the experience that we can bring to the table in terms of changing things for the better of poor and marginalized communities around the world. And I think the key thing for us is putting inequality, human rights and civil society participation back at the center of the debate. So let me try and just spend a few minutes convincing you why inequality matters, why human rights matter, and why civil society matters. And I'll take it in that order. So first of all, we have had an idea, a discourse prevailing in Europe and in the world of late that austerity and growth and the private sector are the way forward, the way that we will solve things. And this idea has trickled down from the international level to the EU, to the Commission, and even to DG Development. And I think what we would really expect is for you to use the opportunities coming up, including the EU-CELAC Summit and all of the discussions around the new Sustainable Development Goals, to try to change this idea and to put human rights and inequality back at the center. So why does inequality matter? I was explaining to this group and to your colleague, Federica Mogherini, yesterday that I just got back from Nicaragua yesterday, and there are colleagues here from Nicaragua, a country where 57% of the population live in poverty, and the rate is much higher in pockets of that country. It's a country where growth is pretty impressive. In fact, we could only be jealous of it here in Europe, 4 to 5% over the last number of years. And still people are living in conditions of outright poverty. Why is this? Because inequality matters. And we know it's exactly the same thing in Europe, that we have a situation whereby people are getting more and more vulnerable because of the policies that we are putting in place. We know that we can tackle inequality through a redistributive agenda. What does that mean for you? Well, we think it's about things like tax justice, making companies pay their way, and in terms of their role in society. We know that the amount of money leaving developing countries every year in terms of taxes not paid is much higher than the amount of aid going to those countries. So it's pretty obvious what we need to do in terms of the future of development finance. We need to put back an agenda that's about domestic resource mobilization, and number one, making companies pay their taxes. It should be the first line as well in corporate social responsibility. Second issue is social protection, which is what helps people to really get started. Putting natural resource management back to the communities, building economies before throwing countries into unequal trade agreements where it's impossible for them to benefit because the relations are just off. And not excluding minority groups from power. When I say power, I mean from decision making, whether it's women, whether it's migrants, whether it's indigenous communities, or whether it's all three in the one person. So in all of this, inequality matters. Why do human rights matter? Well, going back to the story of Nicaragua in the last 10 days, I had heard the most inspiring sentence from a woman living in Matagalpa, just north of the capital city. She said, "Comenzamos conociendo los derechos, solo así vamos a vencer la pobreza," which means we start by knowing our rights. It's only that way that we will find poverty. Why did she say this? Because that woman had left home and school at the age of 14 because she had no other choice. She went into a marriage and had a child at a young age, and thought that that was sort of it for her life. What happened? Well, she got involved with a local association that supported her to understand her rights as a woman, as well as her ability to support women in her own community. And today, she runs an organization that supports women, 600 women farmers in this community. So knowing her rights was what helped her to develop. This is about rights being about a service of the government, not a favor. Rights to education, to health, to infrastructure, whatever it is. And in all of this, and in terms of the role of the European Union in the CELAC region, we need to take this more seriously. So it means not just delivery of aid, which is important, and programs that matter, but also the other side of the coin, which is the policies that undermine those rights. Policies like trade and unfair trade deals that undermine people's rights. Policies like energy, the Renewable Energy Directive of the European Union that has allowed companies to really, literally grab a whole lot of land in countries in Latin America, in Africa, and so on, also extractive policies that really are taking the lifeblood out of countries and really destroying people's environmental and social rights on the way. And I think there you already understand the importance of policy coherence for development. And when we talk about development, we mean tackling poverty. The last thing I want to say is, why is democratic participation of civil society important? Because it's about people, because it's about people who are organized and who have experience, who are working at that local level, at that national level and above. It's about watchdogs, not just service deliverers, and watchdogs that don't necessarily bite, but that do bark sometimes and need to bark and wave the flag. But that space to wave the flag is closing somewhat, a lot in some countries. And that's where we really need the European Commission to send a strong message to all of the countries participating that you need to give that space to civil society to be able to talk about their rights. I'd like to close it there. I think that my other colleagues will also follow up afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Laura. I think really appreciate your your activities very much on the advocacy stage here in Brussels, but also you connect that very strongly with the relationships that your work with ActionAid brings with partners in Latin America. I think that's really comes out very strongly in what you have to say. I want to say a couple of words of introduction, Commissioner, if I may, of you, that many people may not know you. Commissioner Mimica comes from Croatia, the newest EU member state. I think some of us were surprised when you had your nomination as Development Commissioner, but somebody very wise told me something about you when we said, is this Commissioner Mimica, what are we to expect? And they said, you know, Commissioner Mimica, he has been a commissioner at the end of the last commission when Croatia joined. But before that, he was the chief negotiator of Croatia's accession to the European Union. And what this means, as any of you who knows anything about joining this club, which is the European Union, know, it's an extremely complicated process that deals with many topics. In fact, it deals with all the topics. So I think there's very little about EU transport policy, energy policy, competition policy, and many of the other policies of the EU that Commissioner Mimica is not an expert on. And as Laura said, that becomes very, very relevant to the evolving work of what we up until now called EU development policy. If you look at the letterhead of the department that deals with development policy in the EU, it's now development and international cooperation. It's a subtle broadening of the mandate of this department. And I think that we're lucky to have in a commissioner somebody that knows the full range of EU policies. In one of my first discussions I had with a partner from Latin America, who's sitting there, from Alop in Mexico, we had a very interesting discussion where the first thing that Jorge said to me is, well, Mexico, we don't get a bilateral development program from the EU anymore, so we're not very interested in EU development policy anymore, but we're certainly very interested in other EU policies that have an impact on Mexico. So I'm sure in the discussions over the last 2 days, the type of discussions about the relationship between Europe and Latin America now broadens well beyond this issue of bilateral cooperation and moves into all the other areas of policy, of EU policy, how it affects relations with Latin America, and how global issues, global challenges can be better tackled if Europe and Latin America, together with other regions of the world, are tackling those issues together. So, Commissioner, without more ado, let me invite you to address our forum. Thank you.
Well, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure indeed for me to be with you, to join you for this closing session of the EU-CELAC Civil Society Forum. To those of you whom I'm meeting for the first time, I wish to extend a special word of appreciation and thanks for your commitment and engagement. I want to thank both CONCORD and MESA for joining forces to organize this event with the support of the European Union and also the representatives of the non-governmental organizations who have made the past 2 days a rich source of encouragement and inspiration. I would like to touch on the importance of this forum in the general framework of relations between the European Union and the Latin American and Caribbean region. I would also like to place the relationship in the wider context of the current international development agenda. In the working sessions, you have grappled with the themes of socio-economic equality, human rights and welfare, and the promotion of democracy and citizens' participation. These are values and objectives that we wish to promote across the world, not just in developing countries, but in the developed countries as well. We can never take for granted that these are established principles in our societies. They need to be nurtured and fully applied by our citizens, governments, institutions, and civil society organizations in order to keep them meaningful and relevant. The European Union's relationship with the community of Latin American and Caribbean states is built on a strong historical, cultural, and economic links from the level of individuals and families to the level of governments and institutions. We share many common values and interests. Cooperation between our two regions has existed right from the beginning of the European integration process in the 1950s. As the European Commissioner, coming from the most recent member states of the European Union, and many Croats emigrated to South America, I'm privileged to be able to join in this cooperation and to help strengthen it for the future. After all, half of my family is now in Chile after emigrating somewhere in 1930s, 1940s. We are now approaching the next EU-CELAC summit, which will take place in June here in Brussels. This meeting of heads of state and government is the most important biennial event in relations between the two regions. It is the space where the governments of the two regions identify areas of cooperation and provide the necessary political support for the benefit of the Latin American and Caribbean region. The region is one of the great strategic importance and one where issues such as respect for democratic processes, freedom, and human rights remain very relevant. The preparatory process for the summit is therefore important. In the European Year for Development, which is also crucial for international development policy, it takes on an increased significance. The coming months will see several major events that will have a profound impact on the global development agenda for the years and decades to come after 2015. We have to ensure that the decisions taken in Addis Ababa in July, in New York in September, reflect the ambitions to arrive at a new, transformative and universal agenda. At the end of the year, the UN Climate Change Conference in Paris must reach a binding global agreement that will commit us all to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. We know how important this is for Latin America and the Caribbean. The European Commission recently set out our vision of the global partnership and the means of implementation that are needed to deliver on a post-2015 agenda. It contains a list of actions for all countries, including Latin America. There are three elements that I consider to be at the core of our vision: comprehensiveness, universality, and multi-stakeholder engagement. These should guide the action of the international community as we approach the core of the negotiation process. The post-2015 agenda will signal a fundamental shift away from the traditional North-South divide to a universal sustainable development framework that applies to all countries. We all need to act according to our respective capabilities and to put all the tools at our disposal to good use. This applies equally to the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. We must also recognize that the success of the post-2015 development framework depends not only on governments. It will require true multi-stakeholder partnership and active engagement of the private sector, of civil society, parliaments, and local authorities. Strengthening partnerships between these different parties with often different agendas is one of our greatest challenges. These general considerations should shape the approach to the critical choices we need to make on development assistance and financing, including the question of the role of the official development assistance in the post-2015 context. Let me briefly mention the extent of the EU-specific targeted support to the Latin American and Caribbean region. In the past, we have focused on a number of areas with direct interest to civil society organizations. Areas such as social cohesion, social inclusion, and poverty reduction. We need to build on this for our future cooperation. We also need to take into account that in many cases, a country's fragility and vulnerability does not go away just because that country reached a certain level of gross national income per capita. And therefore, graduates from least developed to lower middle income or from lower to upper middle income countries. For Latin America, the European Union has earmarked a total of 2.4 billion euros for development cooperation in the 7 years period between 2014 and 2020. The Caribbean will benefit from 1 billion of aid for the same period. This is a very concrete demonstration of the continued commitment of the European Union and is reflected in the thematic and geographic programming. Bilateral cooperation remains significant in those countries where the development challenges are greatest and where it can have greatest impact. We have therefore developed a series of country roadmaps for engagement with civil society organizations. These will help ensure that your organizations continue to play a key role in the political, economic, and social development of your countries. The objective is to improve the impact, predictability, and visibility of EU actions. Regional programs will continue to play a significant role in the European Union's relations with Latin America over the period from 2014 to 2020. 805 million euros has been earmarked for the Continental Program for Latin America, and then 120 million euros for Central America, and 346 million euros for the Caribbean region. I can confirm that the concerns raised by the civil society organizations during the consultation will be addressed in the regional programs. Under the Development Cooperation Instrument, the thematic program in support of civil society organizations and local authorities in Latin America is providing an envelope of 136 million euros to 29 countries for the next 7 years period. the reinforced European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights focuses on two activities. Firstly, by supporting the role of civil society as actors for change and in support of human rights and democracy, which must be nurtured and consolidated. And secondly, by supporting electoral observation missions and improvement in electoral processes. In Latin America and the Caribbean, the 30 countries will receive an envelope amounting to a total of 51 million euros for the next financing period. But our aid should not be measured simply in terms of amounts. I often say that I would like the European Union to be not only the biggest donor, but also the best one. We also want our aid to be the most effective and efficient. In this respect, we rely on continuous dialogue with civil society organizations in our partner countries. You have a key role to play in improving the welfare of people in their respective countries. You can also help us understand if our aid is effective and efficient. The dialogue and engagement with civil society has always been and remains fundamental in the shaping of the relationship between the European Union and Latin America. Non-governmental organizations have been for a long time at the forefront of social and economic challenges, such as the fight against poverty, famine, illiteracy, and social exclusion. You have become vital players in the region, and we will continue to uphold and support your participation in your national processes. That role will remain important as we continue to focus on poverty reduction and fighting inequalities of all kinds in the areas of health, sanitation, education, and working conditions. In this respect, gender equality is an absolute priority of our work. This also means that we must continue the campaign to eliminate the use of violence against women, which is a particular problem in a number of Latin American countries too. Ladies and gentlemen, this year we have a unique opportunity to redefine and strengthen the way the international community works together, and to change our development paradigm for the benefit of all countries, of all people, and of our planet. Reaching agreement on a truly transformative universal agenda in September and providing the means required to implement it is the only option that we have. The breadth and complexity of the agenda before us is huge. We need to use development cooperation in innovative ways. We need to take account of and complement other sources of finance for developing countries, whether South-South cooperation or new private investments. I do not underestimate the challenge, but I very much welcome the momentum which this special year gives us all to find the solutions that the world and its people need. I firmly believe that the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean can make a hugely important contribution to that process. With that context, their civil society organizations have a particular story to tell, which can have a major impact in other parts of the world. Let me conclude by underlining my personal commitment to close collaboration with the governments and civil society organizations in Latin America and Caribbean countries. I look forward to reading in detail the declaration of this forum, which will serve as valuable input to the EU-CELAC summit in June. I hope that heads of state and governments will be able to sign up at the summit to a far-reaching and ambitious partnership that will demonstrate our commitment to cooperating even more closely and productively in the future in a wide range of areas. This will allow the European Union and the Latin American and Caribbean countries to work hand in hand in the mutual interest of our peoples. I will also show to the rest of the world that such partnership brings added benefits for all and can serve as a prime example of cooperation between regions, governments, and civil society. So thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you all a safe return to your home, to your countries, and I wish that this EU-CELAC Civil Society Forum gives this needed input into the summit of our head of states in June. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. So it's time we had a Latin American voice now, Ivo. So Ivo Lestalpão is from ABON, which is the Brazilian NGO platform that's been going since early 90s, I think, Ivo. You have about 250 members working on human rights, justice issues. So the floor is yours.
Gracias. Nos reunimos estos 2 días, organizaciones de la sociedad civil de América Latina y Caribe y de Europa, llamadas por CONCORD en Europa y MESA de Articulación en América Latina, para tomar posición sobre las relaciones entre Europa y América Latina y Caribe. Y en torno de 3 ejes temáticos. El primer tema sobre el cual nos posicionamos, que están presentes en la declaración que ustedes están recibiendo, o van a recibir ahora, es el de la desigualdad. Desigualdad que ha aumentado en razón de las políticas neoliberales, tanto en América Latina y Caribe cuanto en Europa. Primero, y en los últimos años, a partir de la crisis internacional de 2008, ha aumentado en razón de las políticas de austeridad en Europa también, en algunos países de América Latina. Por tanto, en primer lugar, demandamos igualdad socioeconómica y sustentabilidad ambiental. Cito algunas partes de la declaración: implementar políticas públicas que garanticen la protección social universal y solidaria, de modo que los derechos humanos sean los elementos que definan y informen el orden social y económico. Sabemos que esa desigualdad fue aumentada particularmente en los países de América Latina, pero en los últimos años también en Europa, por el sistema de la deuda pública, a través del cual se atiende no a los intereses de los ciudadanos y ciudadanas de los pueblos, sino a los intereses de los bancos y del capital financiero. Entonces hay que hacer, proponemos eso, auditorías de la deuda en todos nuestros países, para que eso cese de ser causa de desigualdad en nuestros países. Criticamos también, hicimos la denuncia de tratados de libre comercio. Consideramos que los tratados de libre comercio han favorecido los intereses de las empresas transnacionales en detrimento de los derechos de las personas trabajadoras y de los pueblos, generando aún más desempleo y exclusión social. El segundo tema que abordamos más directamente fue el tema de una relación que impulse los derechos humanos y el bienestar. Y aquí decimos reemplazar el actual modo de producción por uno que establezca políticas y medidas regulatorias que aseguren la generación de trabajo decente, la visibilidad de la economía del cuidado y la distribución sexual de los trabajos, en el marco del respeto de los derechos de la naturaleza, la democratización del acceso a los bienes naturales que garantice la restitución de los sistemas ecológicos. Hablamos también de superar el extractivismo en la orientación de la gran inversión privada y pasar a esquemas de diversificación productiva, respetando los derechos de la naturaleza, teniendo en cuenta los graves impactos del cambio climático en los derechos de las personas. Y afirmamos finalmente el tercer eje de preocupación, demandamos promover una democracia efectiva, eso es, una democracia con participación ciudadana, donde sean incorporadas la contribución de las organizaciones de la sociedad civil, que en muchos casos, sobre todo en países de América Latina y Caribe, están siendo criminalizados por su trabajo. Mejorar e impulsar mecanismos efectivos que aseguren la oportunidad de todas las personas de participar en el diseño, implementación y evaluación social de políticas públicas y programas desde el nivel local, nacional e internacional, respetando la autonomía de la sociedad civil. Otorgar el apoyo político y financiero a todas las formas de democracia impulsadas por las organizaciones de la sociedad civil de ambos continentes, especialmente para que escuchen las voces de los sectores más pobres y marginalizados como nuevos medios de auditoría social. Combatir toda forma de discriminación, incluyendo todas las que limitan toda forma de participación democrática. Y solo para finalizar, estamos muy contentos que el comisionario de la Unión Europea en algunos temas claramente se coloca del lado de la sociedad civil, insistiendo sobre nuevos, llama la atención de algunas cosas, la necesidad de cambiar nuestro paradigma de desarrollo, que es una exigencia que hicimos acá también, de permitir el desarrollo de las organizaciones de la sociedad civil, pues que enfrentan desafíos sociales y económicos, y la necesidad de enfrentar lo que decimos hoy y ayer, desigualdades de todos los tipos, especialmente las desigualdades de género. Muchas gracias.
Thanks very much, Ivo. And certainly the declaration, which I think still some work to be done on it, but the declaration, as we have Commissioner, I'll be happily giving you a copy of that at the end. Now, because our speakers have been so economical with their time, we can have a bit of time for any comments and questions from the floor. Can I invite anybody who would like to add to what's been said here, to ask a question, to disagree, to give your reflection on the last 2 days of discussions? While you're thinking, I'm going to say one other thing. I think it was very significant that we had colleagues from the trade union movements here yesterday, reflecting on the struggle for decent work in Latin America and in Europe, and very clearly making the connection that some of the speakers have outlined just now, these universal issues that we face in Latin America and in Europe. And so yesterday morning we heard about Greece as well as about Mexico. And I think that is a sign that we are also broadening our discussion with other partners in a practical way, and that the topics that we're dealing with are we have in common. And this forum has also been about trying to find common voices to common problems. And that's not to say that we have to agree on everything as civil society in Europe and in Latin America, far from it, but that we listen to each other and that we understand what each other has to say. We have a very interesting process that's also been going on this week. It's called the Policy Forum for Development. It's a structured discussion that civil society, local government, the trade unions and others have with the EU institutions. And I think that's been also a moment that we are able to have a dialogue with partners from other parts of the world. And that dialogue is not about having always a common position, but it's about when our partners from Latin America or Africa or Asia say something, we don't look surprised from what they have to say. We know what our partners are saying and that we have an understanding. So I think for me that's been a positive partnership and intervention of the last couple of days. Anyway, I stop and allow questions or comments on the floor. Yes, please. There's maybe a mic. Is there a roving mic? Yeah, coming your way.
thank you very much. This is Maria from IPPF. My comment is in response to your mention on private sector and triangular cooperation or south-to-south cooperation. As you mentioned, the EU is the biggest provider of ODA to Latin America, and we very much, and in line with some of the discussions that are happening prior to the third conference on financing for development, we very much stress it is extremely important that the EU stresses the need of keeping bilateral cooperation and prioritizing bilateral cooperation and multilateral cooperation over the financing from the private sector. We all know there's very few studies, but those studies are showing that not always private cooperation or private sector funding are stressing human rights, and those should be at the core of any cooperation. So this is very, very important that the EU is bearing that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Other comments or questions? I think yes.
Buenas tardes, quisiera saludar al señor comisario y decir que, una vez más, ya me conocen aquí, es importante en este proceso de diálogo de las sociedades civiles tomar en cuenta todos los actores, y creo que han sido mencionados como parte de los actores en América Latina se quieren expresar, son los pueblos indígenas, que históricamente han sido relegados y que ahora piden una oportunidad de autodeterminación y la oportunidad también de hablar de su propia concepción del desarrollo, de su propia concepción de la naturaleza, que pasa por el buen vivir y que pasa por una crítica también del modelo de desarrollo que se ha ido implementando. Entonces me parece importante oír la voz de los indígenas e incorporar este elemento en el proceso de diálogo que se tiene entre la Unión Europea y los países de América Latina. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm Alberto. I'm coming from Uruguay, representing Friends of the Earth groups in Latin America and the Caribbean. I want to comment on your suggestion that we need to change our development paradigm. And obviously agreeing with that very much. Also comment on your suggestion that there needs to be multi-stakeholder participation and partnerships. On that regard, as we see, we think it is of critical importance that corporations, transnational corporations in particular, cannot be, as has been the practice most lately, in the same table with governments on an equal-to-equal partnership situation. Corporations, it is the greed of corporations, which obviously in their sense of being is to bring profits to the shareholders. That sole focus has been bringing us to the bridge of collapse, environmental collapse in the world. Also, corporations in that associations with governments must be strictly regulated and not given all kinds of privileges through free trade agreements, bilateral investment treaties, and all these things. Also, in that regard, yes, the point is really that when sitting with corporations, it is to regulate, to strictly regulate their activities and to bring politics back in power and not economics and the profit interests of these corporations. Thank you.
Thanks very much for those three. Let's just take those three, and I think we'll go in reverse order. Ivo, can I ask you to start? And just to recall what I understood from the questions, I think there were two clear questions on the role of the private sector. You mentioned it also in your intervention. And obviously, Commissioner, that'd be something very interesting to hear from you, your feeling about the role of the private sector. Is the private sector also assuming the same sort of prominence as state, as government? How do we ensure that trade agreements are not only for the benefit of the private sector? It's also a very pertinent question about listening to the voices of indigenous people, and particularly as we talk about environmental issues. Are we listening to other voices, voices that have historically been neglected, and what they have to tell us about environmental issues. Ivo, to you first.
Bueno, solo podría reforzar esa preocupación que nosotros tenemos con las corporaciones transnacionales en particular. Nosotros hablamos durante el trabajo en grupo ayer de ese tratado transatlántico que está siendo discutido entre Europa y Estados Unidos y nos preocupa mucho en América Latina porque las consecuencias de ese tratado, si fueron asignadas como están, serán muy malas para nosotros, no apenas para Europa, sino para los países de América Latina, por causa del poder mayor que ofrecen a las corporaciones transnacionales en detrimento de los intereses de los ciudadanos. Entonces nos preocupa mucho ese tratado particularmente.
There were at least two questions and comments on the role of the private sector in the future, the sustainable development agenda implementation. For the European Union, in the Addis conference, we shall really concentrate our efforts to keep the official development assistance as a major means of implementation, as a major financial source of addressing the development needs, especially of the least developed countries. Our approach to ODA will be to reconfirm our commitment to 0.7% of the GNI for official development assistance. But we would like also other developed countries and other emerging donors to take their part in committing to ODA target, because so far it was only the European Union with such a target officially committed to. Therefore, the ODA remains a key for the implementing the very content, the very gist of the development cooperation agenda. On the other hand, we have to admit that the broader, wider, more complex agenda, development agenda that will come as a consequences of sustainable or moving to the sustainability aspect of that agenda, which means that we have to address all the elements of our development and its impact on the sustainable development, on the socially sustainable development, environmentally sustainable and economically sustainable development. This will call for a broader, more comprehensive means of implementation of such a demand agenda. So ODA will not, whoever commit to the ODA targets, the ODA in global could not be the only source for funding the meeting and meeting such a complex new development agenda. Therefore, other financial and non-financial means of implementation must be taken on board in Addis, be it for this synergy between private and public sector, between domestic and international resources, and also the overall policy framework that must be that must enable the implementation of the whole agenda. When speaking and thinking of the role of the private sector, in my view, and in the view of the European Commission, private sector could be engaged by investment or by its loan capacities in a blending of European Union's or other grants with the concessional loans, leveraging the other concessional loans. But this is, let us say, the financial aspect of. Let us try to find some new innovative financial funding for the complex development agenda. But in terms of context, of the content of the engagement of private sector, it can be only if their engagement is directed and is in line and is within the framework of the development goals we have, not in line with the profit the private sector has. So we would accept, or we would invite the private sector to be a partner in funding part of our development agenda only if they could abide by the development goals that we have in mind when setting and programming our contribution to the development work. So in that context, it's, for instance, when we speak of a domestic resources mobilization and we think of a better, fair taxation, but we speak of avoidance or preventing tax avoidance and tax evasion. So we see the role of a private sector to pay much more taxes for their activities, economic activities in the developing countries, not to let them continue to get some subsidies or whatever for being engaged in the economic activities in the developing partner countries. So in that context, this private-public partnership in development is always to be seen within the development agenda goals, not outside.
Let me be brief, so there's time for another round of questions. And maybe just to, rather to answer those questions, maybe to come back a little bit to what you've said in terms of, first of all, the finance for development agenda. I think it's very welcome that you're keeping ODA, but I think the second part of the sentence for least developing countries is a little bit worrying, because what is least developing countries? I mean, countries move from least developed to middle-income countries without any real change for the population, simply because we know because inequality is at the center. For example, Zambia has recently become a middle-income country. It still has over half of the population living on the poverty line. So it's not a very good indicator to judge where we should be supporting. And I think we'd be concerned about that. The other thing on domestic resource mobilization, what is very positive is that your colleagues have a serious agenda in the Commission for 2015 on tax. We know this, we know that Commissioner Juncker is prioritising tax justice as an issue, particularly in response to a lot of the mobilisation and the momentum around LuxLeaks and so on. But how is that opportunity going to be used? And I think that's where you can play a very positive role, because right now it's being looked at as tax justice for Europe. It needs to be looked at as tax justice globally. And how is this also going to impact the behavior of companies outside of Europe and in terms of aggressive tax practices and so on? Just quickly on the private sector, I think there's a few questions to be asked. First, what is the theory of change of the European Commission in saying that the private sector has potential? Well, we understand that the theory of change is that through the private sector, you create growth and you create jobs, and that is necessary for development. I think that's correct. However, what kind of private sector and what kind of jobs really, really matters. So we can understand if the Commission is giving development aid and finance and loans to capital-starved small and medium-sized enterprises. But what we can't understand is if you're giving money to large companies that are already benefiting from being listed on stock markets, etc., it's not justifiable for those companies to receive that aid. There's also the different question asked by the colleague from Uruguay, which is that other role of the private sector in development, which is in unfortunately undermining rights. And there, what we really want to see, and there are so many iconic cases from Ecuador and Chevron, to many, many more. We need, in order to stop that in future, binding instruments on transnational companies. The UN has a good process there that you and the European Commission and the European Union could be more involved in, and really taking policy coherence for development seriously, which means looking at the role of European companies outside of Europe as well.
Thanks very much, Laura. Time for two more quick questions. There's one here, so one there. Okay.
Yeah, good afternoon, and welcome to our panel and to the beginning of this, a new phase, I guess, in the discussion. as we prepare for the EU-CELAC summit here. I would like to return to and to welcome, of course, the Commissioner's commitment to the question of tax justice. We feel this is maybe a bit late on the agenda, but it's very, very welcome. However, in your presentation of the fact of partnership, the partnership with the private sector, we feel this is a very flawed part of the paradigm, and we think this is really a matter of very substantive concern and very well documented how dangerous this is actually for pro-people enhancement of development possibilities and for the defense of the rights of people on the ground in Europe or in the developing world. And for that reason, I agree very much with what Laura has indicated. And I think this is one of the messages we will be advancing also in the build-up to the summit, is the question of regulation of transnational corporations. That there is a very broad and growing consensus from civil society in both regions that this is really a matter of urgency and a matter of great concern, and we will be urging very much the European Union to get involved proactively and in a very constructive way with this initiative at the UN. That's one point. The other one that I wanted to I think we've had a lot of experience in the last few days here, and maybe this is an important message we also like to convey to the Commissioner, is that when looking for partnership in development, I think we can look to the accumulated experience actually of civil society and social movements over the last, well, maybe especially the last 10, 15 years of incredible sort of breakthroughs in areas of food sovereignty, agroecology, and defensive communities, defensive territories, which can be really the very reliable partners for development with governments and with the Commission and its programs in the Global South. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am Ansari Mariam from Jamaica, Association of Development Agency NGO. Let me first of all thank the Commissioner for his excellent presentation and the rest of the colleagues. Some concerns or comment before going on is that I was really delighted to hear your three main focus points in terms of the social and economic realities, citizen participation on human rights, just those three which really encapsulate the whole picture. And just to say in terms of the economic, social realities, indeed, if these are not really addressed and become a reality in terms of fulfillment, then the development agenda is irrelevant. Citizen participation is us and be a reality, and not just to say participation of citizens without a meaningful reality. And it's the right as human beings to participate and for social economic realities to be addressed. The second is the issue of taxation, and some of the colleagues have addressed it, and Laura has really put a spin at it in terms of the small and medium-sized enterprises. I think we need to look at in terms of the percentage as relates to taxation at the smaller level of society. I don't think the one brush in terms of the private sector will brush us on, because some of us are at the level where in terms of taxation it's already a burden for us. So we need to look at the percentage, tax percentage in terms of which we ask for that. There's something I'm just putting on the table, so you can consider that in your deliberation. Final is to say EVO. I could say EVO, I don't know if I'm correct. Is that I wish to see that you mention the social audit
very crucial, as well as the debt audit, when that becomes a reality. It's very crucial.
Thanks very much. Just going to squeeze one last question in. I think there's a lady at the back wants to ask one. Then I'm going to ask the Commissioner maybe a couple of, I think more comments really there from the floor, but just to ask you, Commissioner, for a last intervention. But just have this last comment or question from back. And then I'm going to ask the Commissioner for a couple of final words, and then I think we're going to wrap it up. Over to you.
Buenas tardes. Agradecer a la Comisión la priorización que tienen sobre el enfoque de género en la política de la Unión Europea. Solamente ahí recalcar y pedir que se tome en cuenta también que cuando estamos hablando de derechos de las mujeres, estamos hablando de equidad de género, no solamente hablamos de los temas de violencia física, sino también de violencia económica. Y esto es importante recalcarlo en la discusión también con la empresa privada. No evitar reproducir más la carga de trabajo a las mujeres, a las familias y a los hogares, y que esto también a su vez se ve reflejado en un menor acceso a lo que son la salud sexual reproductiva, el acceso de jóvenes, mujeres y mujeres adultas también a estos servicios, y que el trabajo y la cooperación bilateral entre nuestros países considere siempre también el no revictimizar o el que los derechos de las mujeres no sean violados. Gracias.
Thank you. We came across ODA again in this round of questions, and I would like just to repeat or rephrase EU position on ODA. ODA is important and will remain important, not only symbolic but also catalyst contributor to the development policy goals implementation, especially in the least developed countries, not exclusively in the least developed countries. But ODA cannot cover all the development needs, and therefore it will be a failure of the Addis Ababa conference if it would be restricted only on discussing and trying to lead the level of the target or commitment for the ODA from all countries. Therefore, our approach is more comprehensive. We would like also to be engaged on other elements of the implementing the development agenda. Taxation, fair taxation, is a process that we embarked on in the European Union, but I would say only recently, only with this new Commission, and now we should soon have a very, let's say, new and steady framework for fair taxation, which we would like to see in our partner countries as well, because we cannot be credible in asking or even in assisting our partner country to do something what we do not do at home, and therefore the same scheme, the same expectations of a taxation system in the European Union will be promoted in the developing countries as well as a part of mobilizing our domestic resources. But in that context, again, I would like to stress that the responsibility and reliability of the corporations and companies that we expect and ask by our regulations in Europe on taxation should be equally applied to the European companies when doing business in our partner countries. On least developed countries, or graduation to the developed countries. Yes, indeed. I admit that this process is, I would say, too mechanical, too arithmetical. Once the OECD claim or knows that there is an increase in GDP per capita to a certain level, then this country as it became. So countries, or and then we switch from the regular bilateral assistance program to graduation phase of bilateral assistance. This process, in my view, and not only in my view, I will do my best to that this becomes a development policy approach, is to have graduation, let us say, more soft approach to graduation in order first of all to adopt the criteria for graduation, not only by having the GDP per capita as a criteria, but also to add other criteria of vulnerability of some specific social conditions in the country, because it is true and this suspect that 70% of poor people is in the traffic countries, upper middle income countries. So, and therefore, I'm a Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development, and this international cooperation title has been added now to the development cooperation. We all know what development is or how we should do or will be better in development, but a few of us know what international cooperation really means. So what we shall do in order to have a real international cooperation? In my view, we have to build the content of international cooperation and to link it primarily with, let us say, with graduated countries, with some new types of programs, not so much ODA related, but much bigger in a phased out procedures, but also to engage other instruments that would make graduation a process that would enable graduated countries to really be in a position to cope with the still persisting development issues. So, all in all, on a public-private partnership, our goal is to have this partnership, but to have it on our terms, not on a private sector terms. And our terms includes very much human rights approach, gender equality approach, inequalities, eliminating inequalities, be it income inequalities or access inequalities. So therefore, whenever we shall go into public-private partnership, we shall ask and expect the private sector to do it on our terms, on our development agenda. So I would really like to have, and we do have, but I would like to continue having civil society on this, on such a new development agenda implementation, not only in terms of implementing the concrete projects that we should increase the participation and the portion of the project that would be decentralized or that would be led to private sector or NGOs to implement them. But we would like to increase the cooperation with the private sector at the policy decision-making process and the policy coherence process. And this is the role where I see that we have good partners in civil society organizations in Europe, but also in our partner countries. And this is an important line to follow in the years to come.
Thanks very much, Commissioner. I want to wrap up by just reflecting a little bit on what was the aim of this forum over the last 2 days, and had some thoughts with some of the colleagues who were involved in organising it. One was strengthening dialogue. Dialogue is a two-way thing. It's about listening to each other. I think that this last 2 days has been, and all the organisation that's gone on before, has been a moment and a space of dialogue. And that's been very important. Dialogue is about seeing also what we share in common, and I think we have broken new ground. Just even the questions, the comments from this last session shows we are talking about common issues. We're talking about tax. We're talking about trade. I think this shows our discussion moves on now historically, and I think that's significant. I think that's been very much marked in this last 2 days. I think joint working is also something I'd like to sort of celebrate. Miguel, you're clearly not on the platform now, but if you could just stand up, I want to also to thank you very much and your colleagues in MESA de Articulación. I think CONCORD and MESA have worked carefully to make this a joint conference, to make this a joint effort. I think as organisations, it's very easy to have a memorandum of understanding. It's very easy to have an agreement, but what does it actually mean to be a partner, to be an ally? You have to work together, you have to struggle together. And I think that through organising an event like this, we put substance into that memorandum of understanding. So I want to thank your team for the efforts in putting this forum together. I really want to thank my team that I've seen more of. I wouldn't say they've done more, but I see them more. I see General Karlshausen there, formerly of the Belgian platform, Natalie Beckejeff, and Soledad Briones from my team. I know that Aprodev, Julieta has been very involved, Carlos Cabo, CONCORD board member, Susanna also from CICAD. So just really, they've been working very, very hard to make this a successful event. I really want to pay tribute to them. I want to thank everybody on the panel this afternoon for your interventions, your thoughtful interventions and responses to the questions. I want to thank the interpreters, who I particularly needed and appreciated. So thanks very much for your hard work over the last couple of days. And I want to close by presenting the declaration that you've worked on today. To say that it's not finalised, but that's the declaration that in a couple of weeks will be finalised and sent to you, Commissioner, and your colleagues from Latin America from this forum. So thank you very much.
Declaration not for my files and for my drawers, but this will be very much well used for the forthcoming summit, but also for other setting the development agenda meetings. Thank you again. Thank you.
Sorry.